Okay, well, this is one of those episodes that, while it is an unforgettable episode, anyone who's seen it, in the grand scheme of things, it's a mixture of incredibly important and utterly meaningless. And looking at it from a TTRPG standpoint, what would I do with this? That is the real question here, because we have a guy who is supposedly a clone of Kahless, who shows up, pretends to be the real Kahless for a while, gets exposed as having been created by the people who are the high priests of Kahless in his shrine at Borath. Or something like that. Borath, sorry, I mispronounced it. Anyways, though, that aspect of the story is just one of those things where you're like, could this make for an interesting game in a TTRPG? Well, one thing that's is an interesting thing about the episode is that the way that the main plot is established is weird even for a TNG. I'm just going to say that. Because you have Worf not show up for work as he is his shift schedule. Instead, Riker and Picard have to hunt him down and find that he's doing some Klingon meditation ritual instead of his duty shift, and are like, what the is wrong with you? Which, okay. In terms of a TTRPG, I would go with that as being one of the NPCs, unless I was really handcrafting a story to work specifically with certain players. That would be the only way that it would actually be good, because surprising players with a story that's, personal to their character is just not a good idea. Anyway, though, and this ends up being something incredibly personal to Worf. No one else. Like, half the rest of the people in the crew might as well not be there. That's a thing that I would personally change if I was to actually use this in a TTRPG. Because of the fact that the story centers way too much on Worf, to the point that Geordi and Deanna Troi appear only in deleted scenes that didn't make it into the finished episode, and several of the other characters barely show up at all. Yep, Picard, Riker, and Data, and funnily enough, this guy actually gets more screen time than certain of the main cast do. Yes, that's Riker. But anyways. Oh yeah, and Data. Yeah. Okay. Side note, I love having recurring minor characters. It makes the story feel expansive. It feels like a world you can live in. Because, let's face it, having a starship with several hundred people on it, you're going to have more than just your main cast. Unless you're going to have a main cast that actually has 200 or 300 people in it, which, good luck with that one. Anyways, though, yeah, Torgan. Minor character who shows up in a whole bunch of episodes. Let's see here. They actually listed, yeah, 14. Okay. Anyway, though. So, the question, of course, is this really, Kahless reborn? No. He is, however, not a coalescent organism, which they actually check for that, because that was a previous episode, and I think Ronald B. Moore also wrote that one, so he remembered that he wrote in that kind of shapeshifter, which, quite frankly, doesn't make sense because of the fact that a coalescent organism can only mimic someone after eating them. Yeah. That's the weird thing with the coalescent organism, is that it surrounds someone, digests them, then imitates them. it can't imitate someone based on being told what that person looks like. They lack that ability. Anyway, though. Yeah, because one of the things with the coalescent organisms is that it actually eats your memories. And in the case of Aquiel Unari, that gave her amnesia. Yeah, she just had permanent amnesia, and if the Enterprise crew hadn't saved her, it would have eaten her too. Kind of terrifying, honestly, but I digress. That's a different episode. So, Kahless was not one of those, which, like I said, they were just doing a checkbox. It's like, is it a coalescent organism? No. Okay, then. Because, like I said, coalescent organism doesn't make sense. Now, Worf going on a spiritual journey. Having a player do that, yeah, you could do that. You could totally do that. You can even have players help an NPC do a spiritual journey. The stated reason for going on a spiritual journey does actually have some merit for a player character to do it. I could actually see someone genuinely decide that they wanted to do that. Now, does that make it a good idea to use in a story? That's well, it's a matter of opinion as to whether that's a good idea. Now, other things. We have the sacred relic known as the Knife of Kiram. The Knife of Kiram is believed to be the only remaining relic that actually has Kalex's DNA in it. Yeah. That's an interesting thing because the fact that the explanation for how the Knife of Kiram has Kaless's blood on it is completely, we don't know. Like, seriously, it's like, we think it's Kaless's blood, but the people who found it didn't actually have the ability to verify that. And it's being kept in a sacred vault because it's a sacred relic, and yeah, no one actually that knows what it is. Also, this actually is something that comes up in the episode, is that the sample of DNA used to create the Kahless clone may or may not have even been from Kahless. Yeah, Kahless clone. I need to look that up. One, the Kahless clone was fed false memories because they have no copy of the memory of the original Kahless. See, the Vulcans actually have that whole like Kotrick arc thing that they actually have the ability to make copies of the memories of certain real people because they use some sort of weird psionic technology in order to actually record the memories of people. People who died thousands of years ago. Vulcans actually have copies of their memories. Yeah, that's a thing. Kind of a fun thing, honestly. Klingons don't do that. Nope. They know that Kahless had a name, and they have a list of things that are attributed to Kahless, but the rest of their religion is based more on, rumor. But this brings me to one of the things that's interesting. It's because, like, as this mentions here, is that Kahless is more figurehead for the ruling class to invoke as a rallying cry. Not necessarily, genuine belief on the part of the people who invoke the name of Kahless. Like here, Core is like, yeah, the Kahless clone, he sucks. Core is the guy who is both in TOS and in DS9, and as an old man Klingon who met Kirk. Yeah, that was fun. Anyway, yeah, I talked about him in a different episode, I think, but anyways, so What this brings up, however, is that not everyone in the Klingon Empire actually follows the cult of Kahless. Which is where this whole thing comes in. It's like, this is one of those things where it kind of gets mentioned in the episode, the idea that there are enemies of the cult of Kahless, and that the enemies of the cult of Kahless might be trying to make them look like idiots by creating a fake Kahless and so on and so forth. Well, as it turns out, it's actually the high priests of the cult of Kahless making themselves look like idiots. But the fact that the idea was considered is interesting. Because as we've noted, there are several Klingons in the show who are highly noteworthy for the fact that they act in ways that are not in accordance with the way that the cult of Kahless says that Klingons should behave. And in some cases, well, an easy example is Duras. Worf fights a duel with Duras. What was Duras's chosen weapon? Well, I think we actually have a picture of it. Duras, son of Toro. I think that's the right one. I don't actually remember. Where's his son? Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, this is the one from Enterprise. Duras, son of Gerard. And a descendant of the other guy who is named Duras. He is someone who used tactics that would be considered treasonous and dishonorable and blah, 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 blah. Is this a guy who actually reveres Kahless the same way Worf does? Excellent question. I don't believe it actually came up. He is, however, someone who, shall we say, got stuff done. Now, if in fact Duras was someone who was outside the cult of Kahless, his actions would make a lot more sense because he would be able to relatively easily recruit followers from anyone who opposes the cult of Kahless. And that is interesting. Where's the sword? Not in this picture. Yeah, that's Worf's bat'leth sticking out of his chest after Worf killed him. He had some sort of a sword that looked more like a katana than a bat'leth. Doesn't have. But yeah, that's another thing about him that's interesting is that the bat'leth in universe lore is that it's a weapon that was created by Kahless, and that members of the cult of Kahless tend to use it as a sort of holy religious symbol / weapon. And lots of people who are not members of the cult of Kahless just don't give up about them. Duras did not use one, and that's interesting. Which also it makes it an interesting question of if Duras had in fact become Chancellor instead of Gowron, would the cult of Kahless have lost their position as the most important religious institution among Klingons? The canonical version of this, of course, is we don't know because of the fact that none of the stuff in universe has actually gone that far in analyzing where things happen. But this is something interesting. Here we are. This just says sword. Doesn't show a picture of Duras's sword. Aw. Okay, I'll click the sword article just to see if it shows sword. Duras's sword. Nope, nope, nope. Emperor Giorgio's sword. Freya's sword. Something or other from TOS. A Romulan sword. A different Romulan sword. Oh, okay. These are Klingon swords, but these aren't actually stated to be the one that Duras used. But yeah, it was this kind of general idea, though. It's like it's a straight blade with a handle, much like a real world sword would be, but the edge of the blade wasn't perfectly straight. It was kind of like weirdly zigzagged and stuff. Like this one here, this isn't even sharp. This is only like half or 3/5 of the sword's length is even has a sharp edge on it. This is actually something you could just like grab with your bare hand. But you know, this would make a nice stabbing tool. Parry, counterattack with a stabbing motion, sure, whatever. Yeah, I think that's what Duras was using. But again, it's like due to the way that the Klingons have religious significance to the Batleth as being the weapon of Kahless himself. Do the others actually have a similar religious significance? I genuinely don't know. And that is something that gets interesting to ponder, despite the fact that we will probably never have a clear answer. But if you're doing a TTRPG, talking about Klingon religion and politics stuff, because let's face it, this episode, while it was primarily about Kahless and the cult of Kahless, it did touch on the position of the cult of Kahless in Klingon politics and how most of the people who were political leaders wanted to be seen as people who were supportive of the cult of Kahless because it was the majority opinion or something. Which episode was this again? That must be something from Star Trek Picard. Oh, Absolute Candor episode. Yeah, okay, that tracks. Those of us would be probably Romulan swords. Yeah, because that guy has Romulan ears. Okay, then. Anyway, that's enough of that. So yeah, messing around with the cult of Kahless in a TTRPG. Sure, why not? Examining whether the shenanigans pulled by the monks worshipping the cult of Kahless are something the players need to do something about. Ooh, yeah, that could be fun too. Especially when the members of the cult are doing something that affects people outside the Klingon Empire. That gets worse. Well, anyways, you guys have fun with that. See you guys later.